Hey everybody, welcome to another episode with Highlighting the Journey with Dan the podcast man. Today, I have a legendary guest. He is my coach, mentor. Today I have Carl Schiavone.
Well, good morning, Dan. Thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I'm really excited to see where this discussion is going to come from. And I know normally I work in a very structured environment, and I'm excited to see how this free-flowing discussion is going to take place.
Oh, of course. Well, let's get a little background on you, Carl. What's where is Carl Schiavone today?
Today, okay. Well, well, first off, I'm very excited to say that Carl Schiavone today is probably where I want to be. And that's kind of being the coach and every day getting up and just trying to make myself better so that I could provide a better service for my clients. So in terms of a personal lifestyle, you know, we split our time between Florida and New York, which is something that I always wanted to do. So this business has afforded me the opportunity to kind of, you know, live the dream that I really wanted to have. So we're still doing real estate investing. We still have our finger on the pulse. We still own properties. It's just that right now I'm just so hyper-focused on the education. So other than that, I'm just trying to keep myself busy and healthy. And as you get older and older, the fight continues to grow with that. So that's just a little bit about where I am today.
Incredible, Carl. So somebody like you that is now all self-performing, this is all your business. I'm very curious in that aspect because of me, I've learned recently of like just not working and then trying to fill my schedule. So how do you adapt to a lifestyle of just saying, you're running the show, you're your own boss? So how did that transpire? Because I think it's a lot more difficult than people think.
Well, you know, it is, especially, you know, in my prior life, I was part of corporate America.
What were you? What were you doing in corporate America?
Well, bottom line is it had started kind of very early in my career as an engineer. And even before then, I was a plant manager for a couple of audio companies. So I was heavily involved in that. And the key with that is whenever you work for someone, they're usually telling you what the goals of the day are or the week or the month. And it kind of gives you a little bit more structure. When you are basically waking up trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to do? It's a completely different perspective. And the good thing about when you work on your own is that you do have the flexibility of making my own schedule. So, you know, I'm fortunate to say I could look ahead a month and say, okay, these are the days that I want to work and the hours that I'm going to be working.
Incredible.
Right? And now, of course, we fit our clients in with that time frame. But that's only a part of the real world. The other part of it is, you know, when a client calls me, you know, 10 o'clock at night and they're putting in an offer first thing in the morning, it's not unusual for me to be on the phone till after midnight or 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning, especially when I'm dealing with, you know, some people on the West Coast. But what I've learned to do, being an engineer has really provided me an opportunity to be highly structured. So, you know, I've used all of the strategies that have ever been written about with time management, whether it be Brian Tracy and Eat That Frog and all the other things, the Pomodoro method and all these other things. It really boils down to, and I'm kind of an old goat, if you will, I still have a things to do list that I manually write. Now, that's done on a daily basis.
One question about that list. Is that a list that is made the day of, or is this a list that's made maybe a few days before? What
happens here is I have a fairly large electronic database of things that need to be accomplished. So when I go to create my day or my week, I'm looking at that master action item register and saying, what do I need to accomplish? And that becomes part of my daily action plan. And, you know, I have incorporated the philosophy of Brian Tracy with the Eat That Frog. And I have a list with all little frogs on it as to what's the most critical thing of the day. And I will tell you,
I love it.
sometimes my list can put you in a very interesting predicament, especially with my wife, who I drive crazy with a list. I mean, I can't do anything without creating a list first, right?
So Eileen, for those who don't know, your wife Eileen, she basically, I know this because I work with you, Carl. She manages a lot of your business, basically.
She manages all of the back end of all of the businesses, whether it be our investing side, whether it be the coaching side, whether it be East Coast RIA side. So she is there doing her own thing.
Wow.
But you know, it's always interesting, as you know, working with a spouse or even a brother or a father or anything like that. There's like a kind of a different, you know, thing. And
Of course.
although I think I'm the boss, I don't think I really am, to be honest with you.
Carl, I have finally, I have admitted to people, I just say it flat out. I said, my wife is the boss. She wears the pants, and everybody's like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's much more easier for me just to admit it and just, I just continue out my day doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
So Carl, well, thank you for providing how you were able to structure that. Now, I'm so interested because for me, as your student and your mentee, that you have always given me education. I honestly don't know your full backstory, and not to go all the way back in time, but I want to pick a moment in time where it was just right before real estate, and then the transition, how you got into real estate.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, I'm not like some of the other people out there that have written books about their beginnings. It's not exactly an exciting story, but it kind of boils down to this. I had a childhood friend who I was connected to since probably 7 or 8 years old. And somehow or another, we were just so interested. We would used to watch episodes of This Old House. I mean, I remember days, my parents would drop me off even before I would drive, right? And we'd sit there in an afternoon, and our typical day would be watching 4 hours of This Old House and then going downstairs and playing pool. Then after we got done playing pool, then we went back to This Old House, and we really, really got psyched up. So really where the point is one day me and him were in his pool, and we were just talking about the future. Kind of bizarre at such a young age.
Can I ask what age?
We were probably 16.
Wow, 16 years old. Wow.
And what ended up happening is that one day that we were sitting in the pool was the very first time we actually said, hey, we could do this, because we were very, very handy.
I love it.
You know, my dad was in construction. I was very good with my hands. He was awesome with his hands. So we said we could do this. So, you know, it took a couple of years, but at the end of the day, we decided we were going to be business partners.
Wow.
Right?
At 16 years old, I love stories like that. That's so incredible. You're saying your story is boring. I'm not, because this is the type of conversations, and I find that visionaries and people that want to do something in life, this is when they think about it when they're young. They're like, wow, I want to excel to another level. And then here's my friend that I'm watching Old House, and we're playing pool together, and we're having a good time. Let's have a good time making a business together.
Yes, absolutely. So what happened from there you know, I ended up graduating. I ended up living on my own.
Where'd you go, Carl?
I went to Patchwork Medford High School. Okay. Right? And
we're still in high school. For some reason, I thought in my head we were going to college.
Oh, okay. No, okay. So, Farmingdale, New York Tech. That's kind of
gotcha.
where I went. And it took a number of years. I was living on my own at 17, right?
Really?
My dad had passed away in my senior year, and my sister ended up taking my mom to live with her, and I was basically I decided that I'm going to live on my own. Fortunately, I come from a restaurant background, and I always worked in my family's restaurant.
So
So
your family had
restaurant,
what type of restaurant was that?
Italian restaurant in
Nice,
Hewlett.
good.
Right. So from five years old, my dad would bring me in, and I would be peeling garlic. Right. So and that set the stage, and then ultimately I ended up getting to be a waiter, and waiter was making tremendous money.
Of course.
Right. In fact, I made more being a waiter than I first started when I was an engineer. Right. So well, it was a very high-end restaurant, but shortly thereafter, about 1983. We bought our first property, right? And
So just hold on one second. So how did we get to the first property? What was like kind of a little bit of the building blocks of that?
well, the building blocks was quite simple. We had no clue what we were doing,
Great.
right?
Love
Let's
it.
remember, we are pre-internet.
Yes,
Right?
of course.
Yeah, I mean, it was invented, and the rich really had access to it. There was no YouTube. There was no podcasts, right? So again, we would go to the library. We would get videos, right?
So there was some form of education.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
You know, this old house, you know, I'll tell you right now, and even by today's standards, it is still the best TV show
I got to start watching
on
it.
the planet. No doubt, right? There is no hype. There is no fluff like you see in the Hollywood-made.
Do you still watch it?
Oh, absolutely. It brings back memories.
I got to watch. I've never seen it.
Yeah.
And it's been mentioned numerous times
Yeah.
in this business, and I have to start. For you, Carl, I'm going to start watching.
Absolutely. So that was our reference point. And, you know, we were both pretty smart, if you will. And we said, look, we could do this. You know, and at that point, I was starting to get to know realtors and things of that nature. And we decided, let's just go do it. And let's also remember, there was no competition back then, right?
Wow.
None.
I didn't
You
even
know,
think about
when
that,
you
yeah.
see what's going on today in today's market and the frenzy and the marketing that people are doing, there's nothing like that back then. So if there was something on MLS, and by the way, MLS was this big book of hard paper, right? It wasn't on the internet, right? So every week you would get the updates, right? And you'd have to, you know, put the updates in your book.
Where would you get the updates? How do you get them?
From the MLS system, they would mail it to
So
realtors.
you would get mailed like a telephone,
Yeah,
a yellow
exactly,
telephone. Wow! So you get wow! It's so
Right.
incredible.
So we ended up coming across this one property in Mastic Beach. This thing looks interesting. We went there. It was an estate situation. We had no idea how deep we were in with this one, right? What the heck is an estate sale, right?
For my audience, can we define a little bit about the estate sale?
Well, this is really where if the owners have passed away, whether there is a will or not, there's a probate process in terms of that title being transferred to whoever the will is identifying. So they ended up listing that property, and we called on it as a fluke. And it was this huge property that just had a little cape in the front and a huge big room because they were from Queens, and they would bring their family of about 50 to spend the weekends because that used to be a vacation community.
Yes, Mastic Beach was bungalows.
Absolutely. So this was a converted bungalow.
But I do have to ask the number, Carl. How much was that first property? Come on, I have to hear the number, Carl, because I buy out there now.
$42,000.
Oh my man!
And we were able to, on our own, we converted it into a 5-bedroom.
Wow.
Right, and we held it for a long time as a rental. And here's the kicker: we negotiated seller financing on our very first deal,
Without even knowing,
not even knowing what the
seller
heck
financing
this was,
is.
right? And all we knew was we heard that, you know what? Sometimes the seller may be willing to hold paper because it could be advantageous to them.
Of course,
Right?
a good strategy.
So they weren't really interested in the few dollars they were going to make as a profit because there was like 8 family members this was getting split across. So I negotiated a 10-year seller financing note, right? And at the end of that,
But you had to know some form of that.
well, no, I did. Well, don't forget, I still have my attorney next to me, right?
Okay,
I'm
all
not
right.
doing this in a complete
I'm just like,
vacuum.
I'm so baffled by this. I'm like, Carl already nailing the first deal, seller financing at a good price.
Absolutely. So, we negotiated that. We ended up doing all the renovations ourselves. The only thing that we brought in someone for was for the electrical,
Of course.
and the roofing, because we didn't want to get involved with that at that point.
Good move.
So, and what's amazing, the house is still there. It still looks almost the same. And the same siding that we put on is still up there. And
After this podcast, and I don't want to say where it is, I have to know. I
Yeah,
want to.
no, I'll let you know.
I want to drive past this
absolutely,
property. I gotta see it.
absolutely. So that's kind of where the start was. And then shortly thereafter, I started my engineering job.
Okay.
And that's when things really escalated, because my partner was also an engineer. So now here we are, two engineers making engineering salary. We were buying literally everything in sight.
What was the name of your engineer?
I'm sorry?
The name of your friend, your engineer friend.
Ron Rickards.
I just want to like kind of like, so you just go with Ron, so we know what you're talking about with Ron.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Ron and I, the downfall of Ron and I working together is when you have two engineers working together with the same mindset, sometimes they don't fill that sphere of things that you need to do. For example, we weren't great people, communicators, right? We were good with numbers. We were good solving problems, but that was one of our downfalls. So we started accumulating, and then we just started with the rental, and then 4 or 5 projects in, we said, well, why don't we fix it up and sell it? We did that, and that went on for quite a while, to the point where Ron decided that he wanted to retire. So for quite a long time, he was down in Florida, and I would just send him checks. So that's kind of the backstory that has led into it, and he was my partner for over 2 decades.
Wow.
Yeah.
16 years old, 2 decades. That is quite remarkable.
Yeah. So that's kind of the beginnings of that.
Wow. So at that point, so you got to that point. When was the transition from, I really don't want to be an engineer anymore, and I want to dive full into real estate? Were you did you become just an agent? Because I know you do list houses.
I am a realtor.
No, I know that. I'm saying, but was there also, what I'm trying to ask you, did you start to switch everything over? Or
Well, what ended up happening is I love being an engineer. I didn't like the politics of corporate America, but I really did something that I really enjoyed, right? I was heavily involved in the aerospace industry.
Incredible.
I ran a small design department, and very sophisticated stuff. And so my business of investing continued, right, even to this day. But where the turning point is that I realized that this is not the long game. And when you look at the transition of corporate America, virtually everyone that I started working with was laid off. So at some point, they said, Carl, you've been here for 23 years. It's time that you go, right? Because we can hire 3 entry-level engineers for what we're paying you, right? So, but again, if we rewind a little bit, going back perhaps about 32 years, I realized that there was a need for the coaching, right? There was just no way for you to learn about this stuff without someone. And if you remember back then, well, you may not.
I don't. Hold on, I gotta know what year. Was I alive? what year was it?
35 years. Are you?
I turned 35 in 2 days.
There you go.
So I was not born.
While you were in diapers,
I was in
trying to
diapers.
figure out how to turn this thing into a business model. And it didn't happen by, strategic planning. I kind of fell into it. My name got around. I started helping this realtor with one of their clients, and it just kept going and going and going. And I, shortly thereafter, I said, my God, there's an opportunity here. So I started coaching pretty soon right after that as a actual business model. So,
wow.
So now not only am I investing, I'm coaching, right? I'm an engineer, right? and I'm trying to have a social life, and that's a real hard one to pull off.
Well, let's pivot just a little bit because I am curious about this question because I do know your wife. How did you meet your wife?
Well, I was looking for a '69 Chevy in the newspaper, and she just happened to be right below the car. You know, I'm being facetious, but it was the singles ad, right?
Really?
And remember, the internet wasn't there yet.
Wow, I don't know this.
To the level that it is today, of course. So yeah, and
Wow.
the old story. You gotta kiss a lot of frogs, and and that's kind of.
Did you get the car though?
No, I didn't get the car.
You did not get the car, but you got something a lot better.
Yeah, I got something
a lot better.
So that's kind of the timeline here, and so again, at some point, my engineering job came to an end, and.
Did you make the decision, or you finally got
No,
that?
they
fun-
made the decision for me.
Okay.
And I saw the writing on the wall.
As you were saying.
And part of the problem is being at the level that I was at, I was already participating in letting other staff members go. So when you see that type of thing and reductions almost on a weekly basis, it really programs you. And there was this old belief back when I was growing up. You're supposed to grow up, go to college, join a big corporation. You're going to have a lot of security. Well, we all know that storyline is really not very accurate, right? With corporate profits and the fact that most companies are publicly owned, it's really about the shareholders.
Correct.
Right? So being an entrepreneur is an extraordinary opportunity for you to really focus on what you feel you need to do in terms of providing for yourself and your family.
100%. So, with all that being said, wow, that's truly incredible, Carl. Thank you for really diving in and giving us that insight and explaining like how the process was back then, because it's quite remarkable how it's evolved today, and to you, as being my coach and mentor, has evolved with that process, because you see what's happening today and the competition and direct mailing and all these things didn't exist back then. And so I want to kind of pick a little bit more of a point. So I know Eileen is runs the back of house. So how did we start formulating this into a business? So I know you, like you said, the investment portion, but really honing in and making it a business structured, having coaching, being a real estate agent. How did we start structuring all those pieces together?
Well, to be honest with you, I had the realtor hat on because I felt that we needed to have that in order to help build the business. I have really no ability and no interest in being able to show a homeowner 15 homes and they still don't buy anything. I just didn't have that bandwidth. I have the heart for it, but I didn't have the bandwidth.
Gotcha.
Right. So, but I used it as a leverage tool. Right. So our focus was to create an educational program that is extremely structured. Right.
Oh, I know.
Right? To the point where I drive Eileen, crazy.
Oh, I know.
And I'm one for continuous improvement, and you're never done growing your business. Right. You're never done getting better.
As you mentioned that, I want to mention to my audience, and I'm going to. So when I hired Carl to be my coach, Carl gave me a whole list of items to do, take care of, and I thought I did them all. And then our first meeting, Carl ripped into me, and rightfully so. And I didn't realize how important all those things were. I was kind of putting things together nonchalantly in the beginning and not really honing in like the idea that, well, Dan, this is a business. You're developing a business, and you have to be that voice for me. I know a lot of people take criticism the wrong way. Oh man, they're insulting me. I never take that from you. I know you have told me everything that comes out of your mouth towards me is in your heart and your best interest. And one of the best lines that I've heard from you is that my money is your, like you referenced that my money is your money, and I would treat it exactly the same. And I wouldn't invest something without having the education, the system, and everything put into place. So
Right.
I really wanted to mention that, like, this is no joke when we start talking about this, because I couldn't imagine you giving information and that person failing because of the information you've given them. Not to say you have, but that could be,
Absolutely.
that would hurt, even
Absolutely.
something that would hurt me so bad that I financially hurt somebody in that aspect. So that's why I know you, that's why you're hard. You're hard for that I know why you're hard on that.
Yes. And, you know, you bring up a couple of good points. Number one, I think one of the biggest challenges that I have with my clients is making them feel that they're running a business, right? It's really about running a business.
100%.
The product happens to be real estate. It could be donuts, it could be a hairdresser, but when you focus on the business, sometimes people don't understand what they need to learn to be successful. See, I have so many people that have reached out to me, say, Carl, you know, I want to do this real estate investing. I want to do this. I want to do that. And it's like, you know, I interview people before I bring them on, obviously. And they're so hyper-focused. Oh, I want to flip. Okay, well, that's great, right? And we're going to get there. But we have this infrastructure that has to be in place for you to be successful. And the biggest challenge, on top of setting that foundation and letting them buy into it, is for their state of mind to be where it needs to be. All too often, people believe that, oh, if I have a coach, they're going to make me successful. No, it doesn't work that way, right? Being successful in any business requires just two elements. One is the fire to succeed, right? And that's so vitally important. Right? When I hear someone says, well, you know, Carl, I couldn't go to that networking event because I got to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Obviously, to you know, Les Brown's teaching, you're not hungry enough.
Ooh.
Very simple.
Very true.
So don't be giving me these excuses because, frankly, I'm not going to accept it. Right?
100%. I mean, I could not agree more of that extra level. Yes, even me, my, you know what I do personally in my personal life. I have a W-2. I have a family. I have a lot of things that are that circle around me. And yes, I want to be this entrepreneur. And it's not this, oh, I'm just going to go buy a house and it's going to be that simple. No, absolutely not. There is an infrastructure. There is a foundation. I didn't buy my first deal until 3 years from your coaching. And I remember one conversation I had with one house because I was so gung-ho. I was like, Carl, what do you think of this house? I'm ready to put a down payment on it. And then you look at me and Dan, he's like, I asked you, is this a good house to buy? And you simply asked me, Dan, are you asking me, should I buy this house or not? I said, yeah, Carl, should I buy this house? You know everything. You should know exactly what the answer is. And you do. And then you just said, Dan, you can't buy this house. I'm like, what? You said to me, you can't buy this house because you don't understand what you're buying. You have no business buying it. And that was like that was like halfway through the 3 years of that process where I really had the wake up call. And I remember in the beginning, I was trying to buy a house, tried buying a house, and luckily you deterred me from buying this one property that I could have. It all made sense, but but ultimately, when I look back on it, it didn't. It truly did not. And now what I have is a business. I have systems in place. Before we started the podcast, and you're my coach, I have everything lined up, and it also makes it a lot easier.
Yes.
It makes it tremendous a lot
Absolutely.
easier, but that takes time too.
Absolutely. So, you know, having the fire is vitally important, but one of the other big things that your average new investor doesn't have is the plan, right? You see, all too often you get overwhelmed with everything that you're seeing on YouTube University and all the other platforms that are out there, but there is no cohesive, comprehensive plan. And without that in place, there's just no way you're going to be successful. It's just so hard. I mean, you may stumble and be successful, and maybe you were lucky. But if you want to be proactive, you need to have the fire and the plan. And it's very vital. And to Dan's point, you have to take responsibility for knowing the business. Will your coaches be by your side? Absolutely. Will I jump all over my client if I know that they're going down a wrong path? Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Right? So that's very important. And the other thing that I just want to kind of make a delineation
Go ahead,
upon,
Carl.
because people are very confused about, is what separates a mentor from a coach, right? So when we look at a mentor could be anyone who's crossed our path. It could be a parent. It could be your 6th grade physical education instructor. These are people that have a strong moral compass. They have a particular skill set. They may have touched you some way. They may have had a breakthrough with you, right? But what separates them from the coach is that the coach is the one who's responsible, who has taken on the task of getting you successful, right? And providing that plan. So when I talk to a lot of people, they say, oh yeah, we talk about, well, do you ever have any coaching before? Oh, I go on Brian Tracy's website and Dale Carnegie and all the other big players out there. Okay, you can view them as a mentor, but they are not your coach, right? They are not there by your side. And that's what's so vitally important. And coaching never stops. Right? I mean, I still talk to people that are much smarter than me all the time. And I get the coaching that I need because things are always changing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest elements. I remember when I first signed on with you, one of the things you have mentioned to me is that, and you just mentioned earlier in the podcast, like you're up 10 p.m. trying to, because you know how vital the real estate business here in Long Island particularly is, and that making that move literally could be that next morning's choice.
Absolutely.
But the resources that I get from you, the fact that I can pick up that phone and I have a crazy deal that I need to act immediately, but I just need that little help and I need that reassurance. I need you to ask the questions I'm not thinking about because maybe I'm so looking this way. And Carl, you go like this. Look at all this, Dan, but you're looking at this. I want you to look at all this. I remember one house too, there was a big flood in the basement, and then you were telling me like you probably need a specialized contractor that can deal with that. And I didn't even think about that. I just thought about dewatering the basement, getting a mold guy down there, and like my steps. But then you take it to a next level, saying there's actually a professional that handles this. I'm like, yeah, he's right. And then what is the cost of that? And that could be tremendous. That will flip your deal immediately especially in Long Island. We know right now in the market, those margins are so tight. They're so tight. You have to be dead on. And you know better than me, Carl, about the construction and everything. And that's what you give to me. You give me that giant view, that big thing when I get on the phone with you and I pick up you call me, right, Carl, I need to talk to you. And that's a coach. That's a coach. That's somebody.
Exactly. And I think I want the audience to recognize that. Make sure you have the right people that you're aligning with, because unfortunately, there's a lot of opportunists out there.
Of course.
And I've seen throughout the years so many people get hurt. A lot of the clients that come to me are people that have been burnt from some other type of educational program that's out there. And also be careful with the people who want to teach you, but there may be an ulterior motive. Maybe they want your money as a private lender, or whatever the case may be. A true coach, right, is not going to be partnering with their clients, right? That's really an important factor, right? Do I get that question? I get it from everybody all the time. And you have to make a clear line in the sand. Are you an educator, right? Or are you in the real estate investing business with them, right? Now, I have a very hard line on it. It doesn't mean that if you do cross that line, it's a bad thing, but that's kind of the straight line that I have.
Of course. You mentioned something really good when you were talking just there. You mentioned that if some other coach, what is their motive? Is there some, what's their agenda? Is there some play right there? So what I want to ask you, Carl, is what do you get out of coaching?
Well,
What brings you that why you keep doing this?
okay, so it kind of boils down to my why. And my why, first of all, let me be perfectly clear. I could be making a ton more money if I stuck with the investing. A ton.
Of course.
Now, don't get me wrong, I get compensated very nicely, right, as a coach. But when I buy a property and I rehab it, and Eileen does her magic because she's an absolute awesome designer.
She is. She's incredible.
She's the best that I've seen. You know, our properties in this market would they crazy over list price. But what it brings to me is a joy that I don't get when I flip a property. When I flip a property,
Wow.
oh yeah, I'm excited, and yeah, I made some change and things of that nature, and I took the ugly home in the neighborhood and made it nice. But it's nothing compared to what I get out when I see my clients saying, Carl, I bought my first property. And to me, that's my addiction, right? That is what drives me.
I love
That's
it.
what keeps me going for all of these years. And there's no stopping the freight train. I mean, Eileen tells me all the time, you know, when are you going to slow down? And I said, well, when they bury me, maybe. I don't know. But it's truly got to come from the heart. Because if you're trying to add value into someone's life for your benefit, that's not a good thing, right? And if you look at the model across the national programs, you know, and we won't name any of them, but what do? They teach you as little as they could so that you can go out and find properties that they will joint venture with and even use their money. So talk about this model that is just so broken. It's just not the right place to be. And it needs, to me, in my opinion, just black and white education.
It's truly incredible, Carl, and I think that's why we align so perfectly, because at the end of the day, my heart always aligns with people. I've always been a person that gets more satisfaction always helping another individual than me gaining something. And even fairly recently, there was a property that I remodeled and everything, and I was having a little tough time finding tenants. And these tenants that I came across, they had a great rental history, paying rent from a previous owner for 7 years, and then the person owning that property foreclosed. They got kicked right out, and this family with 2 kids ended up in a shelter for 2 years. And I went through the interview process, everything that you have taught me, making sure I do my due diligence, background checks, and everything, the NTN, all that good stuff that I've learned from you. And these people were in front of me, and it was crazy because, you know, so analytical, and we're you know, making sure everything checks the boxes, that this is going to be a good person. But it was so much more than that. You know, they checked all those boxes very easily. They had this great rental history, nothing infractioning them. And then I just watched 2 human beings across the table. Now I'm the person that gets to say yes or no. And immediately there was in my brain, of course, checked the boxes, but even my heart just went immediately to yes. And I didn't say yes on the spot. I spoke to my wife, because just like Eileen, for you, Alexa's my business partner, and we do have a formal discussion saying, well, here is everything. Do we both agree? Absolutely. Let's say yes. So we said yes, Carl, and then they got the house. They were beyond. They couldn't, like, it was such an emotional roller coaster, and they didn't have any furniture. They had nothing. And me and Alexa immediately popped on, goes, we got to get them furniture, Dan. I'm like, absolutely. Like, what can we do? And then we started going on Facebook Marketplace, looking for free donations. We found one house, a person was moving to North Carolina, couldn't bring all their furniture. They literally, I got those renters got a box truck. They got there. We filled that whole thing up to the brim with dressers, beds, couch, everything, because the house would have had nothing once they first moved in. And one little thing, and I'll let you talk, Carl, there was such a moment that we had where Alexa was on the phone texting that person, what do you need? And she said this, and I started crying very hard, because she said, I just want to have my 2-year-old daughter have a bed. And like, in my brain is because I envision my daughter. She's 2 years old, and I just like I told Alexa, just go to Walmart, go to Costco, go to wherever. Just please purchase this bed for this woman. And it was so much more than the transactional thing. I'm giving people a home. Like, it's so fulfilling too now with that aspect where I'm fulfilling these people. And then the fact that we did that their faces, it was just so priceless. And I know they're gonna take care of that home, and they appreciate everything that we're doing. So
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you know what? That feeling you wouldn't have had if you just bought and flipped a home. You may have made them more money, but you're not going to get that feeling.
No, it's a priceless feeling. So that's why you do it, Carl. That's I feel it from you, and that's why, like I said, we align.
And it's the same thing with our rental portfolio. I mean, I've been a Section 8 landlord for now over 40 years, right? And people say, oh, this, that, the other thing. Everyone's got their own opinions
Of course.
on the program. And I look at it as, man, you know what? There are just so many families out there that just need help, right? And the program is good, And, people say, well, anyone's taking advantage of you. Well, you know what? That happens even when you're in luxury rentals, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? So the ability to provide housing, kind of helps with the same mindset of the coaching where I just want to help. That's all.
Absolutely, and it's a win-win, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember Section 8 when it was mentioned to me. I did have the wrong mindset. I was not informed. I had no education, but I've heard other people talk in my ear saying, "Oh, it's bad. Stay away from it." And then I remember mentioning it to you, and you just flat out said to me, Dan, first of all, we don't discriminate from any type of programming, any type of person. At the end of the day, what it comes down to, do you feel good about putting that person in your house? And there is no underlying reason, I won't put a Section 8 tenant. I'm having the most success with my Section 8 tenants, flat out. And so far, they still live in my house. And when I do my quarterly inspections, the house is well maintained.
Yes.
But it just comes down to the person. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what their demographics is.
Absolutely. And from a risk mitigation standpoint, our personal performance has been in 40 years, I've never evicted one Section 8 tenant.
That's incredible.
Which is extraordinary.
What was your longest Section 8 tenant?
About 21 years.
Wow. And then so people understand is that the Section 8, the rent goes up.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to sit there and try to navigate
and look, the
those.
bottom line is, even in some areas where the Section 8 fair market rent is not up to a cash market,
Of course.
I take into consideration the turnover costs. So our average tenancy documented is over 11 years, right?
Wow.
So when you have that type of sustainability, I can afford to collect less than the rent because I don't have the issues of vacancy loss and things of that. In fact, if I evaluate a property today for a Section 8, I wouldn't even figure in vacancy, right?
Yeah,
Because
you
I
don't-
know it's not even an issue
Yeah, no, it's
for
not.
me, right?
Of course. I mean, forget about it. When I list my properties, the floodgates are open. They are wide open, and the amount of inquiries that we get from just people trying to apply are just there's not enough housing.
Absolutely.
Not enough housing. Yeah. Truly, truly incredible. So, with all the coaching, Carl, I want to kind of ask you this: have you, or maybe you have, so maybe you can just answer it that way. Have you ever coached somebody to be a coach?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Absolutely.
And how does that, I don't know anything about that. How does that process,
Well,
what would unfold for that?
Really what it's about is trying to make sure that, number one, they're doing it for the right reasons.
Okay.
They have the right skill set to be that coach, and to try to help them develop a program. And part of that is really about making sure that you're the real deal. And a lot of people out there are not the real deal.
Yeah.
Right? It's about making sure that people believe in you. It's about making sure that you're not hard selling, and people will come to you. I've never placed an ad once for coaching, ever. ever. Okay.
You are word of mouth.
You know,
I mean,
so when you get your reputation to the point, you know, where your business is kind of on autopilot,
oh yeah.
right? But yeah, and I've come across many people that even though they're not quote unquote a coach, they are doing things of sharing their knowledge. If you look at some of the people that are in our network, whether it be Handsome Home Buyer or some of the others, these are people that may not have a quote unquote formal coaching program, but they're out there trying to educate the best that they can. So, and that's just, again, part of their personality.
Of course, and I find myself in that position. I find myself, you know, I won't sell anybody anything, first of all and foremost. I'm in no position to be doing any of those things right now. I would like to one day, hopefully, be in
Absolutely.
that, be in
Well,
that
you
position.
have the personality. You see, bottom line is, it's about the person, right? And quite frankly, it's really about being able to work mindset. Because real estate is so darn easy, it's ridiculous, right? You know, from the world that I've come from, in high-tech engineering, real estate is a cakewalk. But you see, what makes a coach a good coach is the ability for them to handle multiple personalities, right? Multiple things. You know, there are people that, you know, I would speak to that would come in, they were in a business for 5 or 10 years and they're just arrogant. They're not open to new things. Okay, well, this is obviously not going to work out.
Of course.
Right? So you have to have that ability. It's not just being a subject matter expert. It's also trying to be the heavy, the guy who's got to kick someone in the pants, and boy, I have to do that a lot sometimes.
You have to.
Right? You have to. That your role is that.
Yes.
You know, and
I'd rather, so hold on one second. I'd rather hear it from you than hear it from the bank, my attorney, or somebody else saying, well, Dan, this is what happened, or look at my account and my accountant's going, what did you do here? I'd rather hear it before I make that decision from from you. I'd rather get kicked in the butt by you, Carl.
Yeah. And you know, what's kind of a shame too is when you look at some of the chatter on Facebook, it's a real sad storyline for when people say, oh, should I hire a coach? You know, and it's like everyone is just trashing the whole concept because they just don't get it. They don't understand it. Well, if they were so good at that, why aren't they doing their own deals? Well, the good coaches could, and they probably are. Right?
So
but they've chose to make that their core business.
So like with my father, old school Italian, came from Sicily, like it just this whole personality of like, because he was in Italy when I hired you and I told him about you and he goes, what? You did what? How much did you pay? He asked all these questions. What are you doing? And then when he finally met you and saw what kind of person you were, and the education now, and I talked to my father about these rental properties. It's so funny. He goes, "Did you talk to Carl? Did you talk to Carl?" I'm like, yes, I talked to Carl. Don't worry. All right, just make sure that Carl knows now. I'm like, wow, we'll talk about it.
Absolutely.
But it's not my father's fault. There is that thing where it's like, oh, what are you paying for that person to do? But it's got to, like you said, it's got to be the right person.
Absolutely.
It's got to be the right person.
I've spent a lot of money speaking to some very high level people. And
do you get coached?
I currently, right now, I am not. I just don't have the bandwidth for it. But I prescribe to some very big players in terms of their inner office, if you will, in terms of their private webinars and things of that nature. But I'm a firm believer in it. And you know, here's the thing. Unfortunately, the higher your level is, the harder it is to find the right coach. Because you know what? If I wanted to join a Kawasaki program, for example, you think I'm getting Robert? I don't think so. The guy that they're going to give me, or gal, you know, where are they? You know, and that's the key. And you know what? And the thing to understand here, what makes a good coach doesn't necessarily mean that they are the best at what they do. I'll give you an example. Every business owner has a coach, you know, at the corporate level of some level, right? If you're a Fortune 500 company, you're a golf pro, you have a coach, right? Does that coach play golf better than you? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You really think that You know, these championship players
Football
can't
players,
beat their coaches.
of
Of course
course,
they
of
can.
course.
But what's in a coach? The coach has the ability to see your performance
Incredible.
and say, here are the 3 things that you need to do to even be better. That's the key.
So we talked a lot about coaching, Carl, and I think we nailed it. I think you gave such incredible information. I want to switch into definitely a big topic and a big thing that you're very big on, and you don't stop talking about it, is networking. So I want you to mention what you run right now. And
Okay. Well, I'm the founder of East Coast Real Estate Investors Association, and we've been at it for about 15 years. And this was originally a live platform. We used to meet monthly, and I would be bringing in local speakers and things of that nature. And we'd have a networking, we'd have dinner.
You know that restaurant's closing?
Yes, the Monaco's is closing. It's a
Oh, man.
legacy. Yeah.
We're very fortunate to get that one last meeting in there,
Yes,
Carl.
absolutely. And, you know, to Dan's point, one of the things that I feel is at the core of any type of business success is really who you surround yourself with, right? You've heard the quotes, you know, you're the equivalent or the average of the 5 people that you hang around with. Well, bottom line is this. I have a lot of years of experience that have validated the fact that when you are a good person, when you are likable, when your moral compass is strong, you don't have to be the sharpest knife in the drawer, because you're going to attract people that are going to come to you because of who you are. Now, when you add on your skill set on top of it, that really puts the cherry on the cake. Right?
Of course, yeah.
So this is another area that I've had a lot of challenges with my clients, is trying to get them reprogrammed to say, look, I need you to go to these events. You need to go out there and you need to pollinate. You need to leave that meeting with 10 contacts, and you need to follow up with those contacts during the week, right? Even networking is a skill, right? And you got to have the right mindset. You can't walk in there like some cocky person thinking, oh, I'm a successful real estate investor. You need to absorb. You need to ask why. You need to be vulnerable. And when you are vulnerable and you are uncomfortable, that's where the growth really takes place, right? So for all of you out there, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of opportunities for networking. But here, again, is another area you do have to be careful with, is that there's a lot of platforms out there that are just trying to sell you something, right?
So what I've noticed about our group, Carl, is I feel that you only let a certain personality into that group, because when I talk to pretty much most of the people in that group, I would say about 80 to 85% in the group, I find them having the same mindset. I'm able to be vulnerable. I'm able to, well, at first it was uncomfortable, pick up the phone and call this stranger. Hey, how are you? I'm Dan. And yes, that's the uncomfortable, insecure part. But now, oh, I hand my car out. Yeah, call me. And I'm just like, you call me. And you know, even if I have to make the first move, but it is that. And
Absolutely.
exploded my business because it covers so many areas. I don't have to run to you every second for every little thing. I need a plumber. Oh, I know someone in the group that is a plumber. Those are filling in those gaps. And the one big thing, we talk about the coaching, we talk about the networking, we talk about what you have ultimately done for me, Carl, is make me self-sustaining. I know how to run a business. I know how to network with people. And if I don't know something, yes, I do have you in my back pocket, but then maybe I have somebody else to explore, saying, you know what, this guy knows what he's doing. Maybe they want to partner up. Maybe they want to do some business together.
Exactly.
You know?
And that's a good point that you bring up about the partnering, because one of the things that the networking does provide for you is relationships. And please heed this warning, because I'm always on the other side of this issue, is make sure that you know who you're going to joint venture with, right? Even if it's a one-off JV, right? Make sure that
What's a JV? So
joint venture.
A joint venture.
Joint venture, right? If it's just a one-shot deal, make sure that there's an alignment there before you do business. Build your relationship. Be the person that everyone wants to be around. And you know what? You will never, ever have a problem finding money or finding the deals. Some of my most successful clients have leveraged their personality, not their necessary real estate skills, but their personality, their warmth, their ability to add value to others as the secret sauce.
I am that person. I am that person, by the way. I am not the sharpest with numbers. I am not the sharpest when it comes to real estate. But everything that you have told me and educated me on, I do have that core foundation. I do know what I do know in investing and buying rental properties. I do have that. Is there people that can execute it much better? 100%. But I have found that I've honed in on my personality to network and get the right people to fill in I like to say it, what I'm not good at, basically. What I am not good at, which is fine. Would I like to get better? Absolutely. Each day I'm still working towards that. But at the end of the day, I have a business I'm running, and I'm not, we always talked about, my history of like always going, swinging the hammer, and I'm putting the sweat equity in, and then you keep saying, well, when are you going to hire the contractor? And I'm like, oh my God, but you know how much money I can save? But then you could be, Dan, at the same time looking for the next deal while that other person's swinging the hammer. It's going to cost a little bit more money. Of course, we're not silly when it comes to that. But then what do you gain? You gain another property. So I am the product of that too, Carl. I am your product in the sense of all this, and I'm so happy to have you here today. But I am that person that is very personal. I want to shake hands. I want to help. How can I help? And so, yes, I hone in what I got, and that's definitely one.
And anyone could be unstoppable if they just put other people's growth ahead of their own. Sometimes for some people that's hard to do because they have their own motives,
Of course.
right? But when you latch on to people that are thinking like that, it's like treasure.
I saw something online recently, and this woman was speaking. It's like, when companies hire people, believe it or not, the reason most companies hire people, and yes, you do need a skill set and you need to have some form of a background on whatever the position is, but most of the time, and I heard this and it made sense to me, it's like, are you likable? They want to hire people that are likable. You want to spend your time. I spend a good time at work. I want to spend it with people that I enjoy spending my time with. And
oh, absolutely. And when you're not likable, it just adds more internal conflict, having nothing to do with the skill set that you need.
oh yeah, right? You can be so good at something, but if you're so difficult to have a conversation with, we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, it kind of reflects back to a story back in the aerospace days. Is our chief engineer was an absolute brilliant person, but we would never let him talk to customers. Right?
Stay away from him.
But man, you want this plane to fly. This is the guy to talk to, but we really don't want you talking to him, kind of thing. So there's so much value in that, and I just wish people would take that to heart.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the same thing. Go do the uncomfortable thing, shake hands, go out there, go to the events. We covered such incredible ground here, Carl, but I still have a few other questions.
Sure, absolutely. I'm here all day, man.
Oh, great, man. We might go the whole hour and a half. Carl, we've talked a lot about business. We talked a lot about real estate. We talked about your past. I want to know these questions. This is what I need to know. What do you enjoy doing? What are your hobbies, Carl?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, yeah, I went there. I want to know.
Hobbies, that's something that you do in your free time that you enjoy, right?
Yes, do you have that time?
Do I? I'm trying to think now. Well, I am an avid fisherman, but that doesn't mean I get to fish as much as I would like. I enjoy gardening, So,
really?
It's my favorite thing to do,
Wow.
So,
What do you plant? What do you plant?
Well, it's just, shrubs and, when you have plants and shrubs in a garden, there's always something to do.
Do you do vegetables?
Yeah.
And,
well, this year we decided, it's a little tough because, we're usually not in New York, a good part of the year.
So
right?
hold that a second. There's a reason why we're wearing a Hawaiian shirt. So ever so often when I get on a networking call with Carl, when we're doing that one-on-one coaching, I see Carl that is in Florida and he looks so dashing in this Hawaiian shirt. I just said, I love it. And that's how I said, I wanted both to recognize that.
Well, thank you. And
I-
I'll tell you, talk about being uncomfortable. That's out of my comfort zone.
Really?
Because usually I'm shirt and tie to
Oh,
everything
yeah.
that I go to, right? So, but that's just me. But yeah, I enjoy that. I enjoy cooking, although I don't do enough of that. Eileen does all the heavy lifting with that. I do some of the stuff. Again, coming from a restaurant background, you know, I have a lot of enjoyment with that. I ride my bike. I ride 5 miles a day.
Really? So, like, do you have like a set path here in Long Island, or?
Well, you know, I drive around my town. That's about it.
Gotcha.
You know, it does get boring, but I'm trying to have a little bit more of a healthy lifestyle. So between that, we have a beautiful golden doodle. We spend time with the golden doodle. It's almost like every day we'd say, okay, what do you want to do with Brandy today?
It comes to Florida?
Oh, absolutely. You know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of what I do in my spare time. You know.
So maybe you can answer this question. What does Eileen ask you that she wants to do, but you don't do it, or you just say yes to it? Is there any activities or things in that nature?
Well, she's ever decorating something. Our own home,
so
right? So it's like that's something that, hon, I don't care what you do, just buy something. You know, because
such a man's. I'm the same.
yeah,
I'm such a man.
exactly.
Such
Well, you know what it is?
Buy what you want.
With all the platforms out there, with Wayfair and Marketplace and everything, you know, look, as an engineer, I know very much about research, but I just want a chair. We don't need a thesis for this, okay? And it's like, come on. So that's kind of that. What's a little bit unique about our relationship is I'm a very early riser.
What time do you get up? I want to know. I need to know.
I'm usually by 5:30.
Okay, so
you know, it's not too bad.
I'm a 5.
But I'm at my desk by 6 o'clock, right? Working, and but Eileen is the opposite. So she slips in a little bit later, but she's also up till 12, 1 o'clock at night.
But you're mentioning that thing about partnerships and stuff like that. It's just you two work fantastic together because you are this element and then Eileen is the other element. And it's just how it works. I have that very similar relationship with my wife where she looks at me, it's like, what time did you get up this morning? I'm like, I've been up since 4 o'clock. And it's like, what? And it's like, yeah, I already worked out. I already went through all these a bunch of work items, and it's 7:30. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm ready to enjoy the rest of the day. And then she hasn't even started. She can't even process that. She's like, I didn't even have a cup of coffee yet.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Oh man. Anyway, was there anything else? This is the time and place.
I know you wanted to throw some tidbits for a new investor starting.
Yes, let's hook in some people that want to dive into this. Thank you, Carl, for hosting my show. That was a coach move. Did you see that? I went blank, and Carl stepped in and helped me facilitate that. So,
well, you know what? I'm also flying blind because normally my MO is having flashcards or a piece of paper. So I get it, you know.
Yeah, but you are just too filled with knowledge. So let's ask the basic question. I am a person that wants to get into real estate. What is kind of the first move? What is the kind of the first thing you would recommend?
Okay, that's a very good question. Number one, my suggestion is commit to having some time where you're just building the foundation, right? I get people that from day one say, okay, in 2 weeks, I want to buy a home, okay? And I try to convince them to say, look, if we spend more time building your foundation, you will be able to scale much quicker. So
and what do you mean by scale, by the way?
Well, when we talk about scaling, we talk about, everyone talks about when they're first getting started, their first deal. Right?
Yep.
Right? And that's very important because that's like a major breakthrough on many levels.
Yeah.
But in order for this to sustain into a real business, you got to do more than the one. So my point being is when you are dedicated to the structure of your foundation and the structure of your business, is that you get those skills up front that's going to allow you to scale at a much quicker point. You see, sometimes the mindset is, oh, I'll learn that when I need to implement that.
Yep.
That's not necessarily the best strategy out there, right? So being committed to a period where you're saying, I'm not looking for any properties. Now, with my program, for example, as part of their homework, they're evaluating properties, they're seeing properties. But it's real clear this is an academic exercise. This is not an acquisition exercise.
Of course.
Right? And that's good. So that's number one, the foundation. Number two would
Hold on,
be
hold on one
okay.
second with that statement. So Carl mentioned something very important about building that foundation. For me, I'm a testimonial. I am a product of what Carl's education has brought me. I didn't get my deal until year 3, and I'm going to make it very simple in numbers wise. I found the right house, right price, executed, cash flows, and I built. So in other words, I put in money into the property and I cashed out of that house and made $80,000 on my first deal. I would have never made that mathematical equation without what my foundation was. And that's how long I spent. I used to wake up every morning running on the treadmill. When am I going to get the next house? When am I going to get that? I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do that. And then I'm like, wait a minute, slow down. Carl gave you a list of things to do. You have your homework assignments. Keep evaluating house. Take it easy. You're gonna get there because the first deal is always like you said, it's the monumental moment. It's the moment where you feel that you have gotten to that level. And when I finally executed it, it was fantastic. And then when I cashed out recently this year, I was like, what? I was like, what? Carl was right. He was right. But what was the second thing, Carl, you're going for?
Well, the next bullet I would say is making sure that you have your team together.
Yes.
Right. And that means to do it the day that you decide that you're going to go on this journey, not the day that you're going to go into contract and now you have to look for an attorney. You want that attorney by your side. You want that CPA by your side, that business advisor by your side as you're making your decisions. Should I have an LLC? Should I have an S Corp? What should I do? Right? Right? Those are not questions for when you're making an offer. So have that professional team that know that you're going to be using them. And that's a big, important factor. You can't just arbitrarily call an attorney that you know and say, hey, Larry, you want to answer a question? You got to say, look, Larry, I'm building my business model. I'm getting ready. You're going to be the guy, but I got some questions.
And I want to talk a little bit about that relationship. And this is very important, okay? This isn't, like you said, a quick phone call. Just like you're networking, you will have to spend time with these people. You have to make that phone call ever so often. You have to go see that person. You have to get comfortable with them, because when you make that purchase and they're your support team, CPA, lawyer, insurance, everything, you want to be just picking up the phone and say, here's what I need. And that's how everything operates. People ask me now, it's like, how do you do it? I'm like, it's really not that hard as you think it is. It was hard in the beginning, 100%. But for me now, it's just a few phone calls. Here's the property. This is how much I want to buy it for. Here's my hard money. This is where I'm funding it, X, Y, Z. And all the pieces are together so effortlessly. I can't even believe this is a thing, but that's building that professional support team. You need that, and you have to nurture that. They got to know you're serious. If you're not, like even my real estate agent, I asked her, it's like, how'd you know that I was a serious buyer? She's like, oh, I can tell when people are serious buyers. And we saw at least 80 houses before we got to that first deal I've just mentioned. 80 houses. We used to see five houses every Sunday because I worked from Monday to Friday or Saturdays, but Sunday, woke up, my real estate agent aligned with my investment criteria, and then from there, she's like, we're seeing this. I asked them, no, I actually originally went, I want to see this house and I want to see this house. It's like, great. And then, Dan, you're going to see this, and this. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was there, but that fits your investment criteria. I said, and that's developing that professional, that team, what I'm looking for.
Absolutely. Okay, another point is understand the concept of money, right? Have your capital allocation plan ready. Know that when you're starting to look, that you understand what you can contribute to this venture. And this way you can now utilize all of the other resources that are out there for any gap funding that you may need. And that would also be the time where you need to kind of think about this. So for example, if I have $300,000 that I'm ready to invest in this business, should I buy one property and pay it cash? Should I buy 3 properties and put $100,000 down? Right?
He asked me that, by the way. I remember this question.
Right? And that's a very important question because statistically, the properties overall, your balance sheet's going to look much better whenever you leverage someone else's money. The one thing that I do want to warn everyone about is, this whole BRRRR strategy where you buy the property, you're renovating it, you'll rent it out, and you refinance it and then repeat. By putting the money in and then do a refinance like you did, just be careful on the back end that you're not leaving a property that's not performing well. I hear all too often, hey, Carl, I got all of my money back. Yeah, but you're only making $13 positive cash flow a month, right? So just make sure going into a deal, you're evaluating your exit strategy. And if one of your exit strategies is to do a cash out refi, make sure it's still really, really solid.
With that BRRRR strategy, I want to mention, because one of my other properties I just did, I'm pretty much in the process. I'm going to see whether or not to pull money out of it. And this particular property doesn't look like I'm going to put money out of it, and I'm fine with that. But for me, for my age and my investment criteria, I know I'm a long-term play. I know eventually in 10, 15 years, that property's equity is going to go back up, and I'm going to leave all the money in the deal and then move forward. That BRRRR strategy is not going to work 100% of the time, but I have an asset right now that's still worth a lot of money, and it's cash flowing well. Like for somebody like my father, older in age, he wants to buy another property, but he's more focused on cash flow. He doesn't have the time for let's say, the equity. But it all boils down, like you said, what is your investment criteria? Because you can just say, oh, I want to invest in real estate. I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. What do you want to do? I just want to make money. Oh, well, that's very vague. And you got to kind of say how much you want to make. And there's so many different strategies, like you said, how to skin this cat is just.
Absolutely.
So with the personal financing, and I'll let you take the wheel after this too, Carl, with personal financing, and I've learned this when I started to get into investment, I think it's very important for people to understand their own money. In the beginning, before I really got into this, I spent a lot of time realizing, wow, you're wasting money here, you're wasting money here, you don't care about that, where's all your money going? And I think if your mindset is to just throw money out the door, I don't think you're going to be successful. I'm not telling you to be super, super conservative, because you do need to spend money, but you have to understand how your financial situation was. And I remember mine was a little bit of a mess in the beginning, but then I'm like, okay, I got to tighten this up. I don't need all these streaming services. I don't need this. Yes, it may be a few extra dollars, but it's setting the mindset and the stage when my property comes, I want to act in that manner. If I just throw money out the door on the house, am I making money? So I think internal personal research on yourself is very crucial, understanding that.
Absolutely. No, that's a very good point. And just by the way, I'm not categorically saying don't consider the BRRRR, but remember, the BRRRR, most lenders are going to allow you to take out up to their LTV, their loan to value number. Well, if the loan to value is 70%, for example, well, how about taking out only 50% or 40%? Because remember, the more equity you have in that property, the more you can leverage that going forward when the market will actually be higher, right? So that's good.
So when the market's higher, so what does that mean, Carl? We have a type of cycle, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you want to break that down a little bit from a buyer's market and a seller's market?
Well, and right now it's really hard to tell what the heck is going on.
I can't figure it out, by the way. I don't know what we're in Long Island.
Even the best of the realtors can't. One thing is for sure, we know that the inventory is historically low levels. Just look at, just to give you a snapshot of where I live right now, there's 12 homes for sale, when 3 years ago to 5 years ago, coming off of COVID, there was on average 80 to 90, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot less. What does that mean? The law of supply and demand is going to push up those prices regardless of where the interest rate is, right? Because I'm sure there's 12 people that need a home and are going to pay,
of course,
whatever is going on in the marketplace, right? Now, you can't always be a good buyer and seller in the same market. But one thing is for sure, every market cycle has an opportunity for you to benefit,
Yep.
right? When it's a seller's market, right? Well, now's the opportunity for you to either leverage that through a refi, right? Or to sell the property. And of course, on a buyer's market, when prices are taking a hit, now you kind of start bringing in more inventory. So there's never a quote unquote slow time in the business world of real estate. It's just what strategy you're going to be using. And the market climate is very much dependent upon your geographic location. For example, if you see what's going on in Florida now, right? Tremendous overbuilding, right? I'm very familiar with that market, right? And when you couple that with what's going on with the condo situation, where condos are falling apart and they're bringing in endorsements from the owners and things of that nature. Across the country, there are not only emerging markets that are just popping up, but there are markets that are hurting. So even in the same period of time, you should be searching for the right market to play in. And is that market going to be a low cap rate market? Am I looking for appreciation? Right? So if we look at Manhattan, which is trading about 3.5% as a cap rate, you're buying that for appreciation. If you're going to a tertiary city, Schenectady, Binghamton, Syracuse, et cetera, higher cap rate, you're buying that for cash flow.
Yeah.
Now, depending on if it's a value play, you may or may not do well on the equity side. So there's just so many intricacies of market selection and strategy that when we stop time, there's not one answer that applies to everything.
Impossible.
Right?
It's impossible.
The key here is to know what your investment goals are, making sure that you are in a market that makes the most sense for your goals, right? And that's going to give you the safest way to reduce your risk.
Well, Carl, we're hitting the end of the podcast, and before we kind of segue and finish everything off, do you have any advice, wisdom, anything you want to tell to the world out there? I feel like you got something really, really good there.
Oh, now I'm under the gun.
Oh, now you're under the gun. I know. Listen, I know when I review your worksheets and everything, you got those famous quotes from like Daniel Cardigan or something like that, or maybe a Carl. I want a Carl Schiavone one, by the way. I don't. Okay, I want.
Well, let me first say it this way. A lot of people view this business and businesses like this as, oh, this is my dream, right? And the one thing that I have seen is that I have seen some of the most unlikely people to be wildly successful achieve their goals. And they do that by the commitment. They do that by their hunger. And they do that by their plan. And you cannot do that on your own. It would be very unlikely for you to be smart enough to know exactly what you should be doing. We know that as an entrepreneur, we are challenged. If any of you have read the E-Myth Revisited, or you haven't read it, you should be reading it. And it talks about exactly what most new business owners fall into a trap with. They don't know whether to be the entrepreneur who is the dreamer, who's coming up with these crazy ideas, or the manager who wants structure, procedures, process, organization, or the worker who wants to sit there and put up walls. And unfortunately, any solid business requires all of those three pillars, but you need to know that you're balancing that. Now, when you align that with goals, and goals is a very important thing that you must have, if you're going at this with the lack of goals, that is not going to be good. And even if your goals have nothing to do with buying a property, you can say, well, look, by the end of 2025, I want to establish my foundation. And here are some of my low-level goals that I would like to achieve. Make sure that you wake up every day knowing exactly what you should be working on. Because if you don't, then I will guarantee you there's a good chance you're working on the wrong stuff, right? Don't give up, and remember that even through failure, there's going to be things that you're going to learn. And some of the most successful inventors in this country have just stepped over rejection, failure, things of that nature. Look at Henry Ford, right? I believe the number is 110 banks did not want to fund his assembly line, right? Think about it like that, right? You think about Einstein and his inventions, you know, hundreds and hundreds of failed attempts, right? You got to be hungry. Vincent van Gogh painted his whole life, didn't get famous till after he was dead, right? So the bottom line is your destiny is completely in your hands. And that should excite you because you're not having someone pulling your string. And I know that you guys can do it. You just need the plan and the fire. And with that, I just want to wish everyone the very best of success. Thank you.
Carl, that was, oh my God, I need that whole transcript, and I want it on my wall. Carl, I cannot thank you enough for, first of all, obviously doing this podcast, but much, much more than that, Carl. You have educated me and pushed me to have the life that I dream of today. I'm the product of yours, what you have educated me, even in real estate, but even my W-2 life and even my family life, how to structure everything. Carl, I'm so indebted to you in the best way, and I cannot thank and how lucky I am that I get to share this studio today with you, that you came in and we shared this incredible knowledge. But Carl, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all the hard work you do for me, and I know, of course, for all of our people out there that is under your coaching.
Thank you so much. And the thing that, you know, I want you to understand as well, it's an honor to work with people like yourself.
Thank you, Carl.
It's a special thing when people say, look, Carl, let's do this. And when you're successful, it just gives me so much joy, and I love you to death.
Thank
and
you,
I know
Carl.
you're going to go as far as you want to go.
Oh, just like the destiny.
So thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Guys, that's it for our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a comment, review, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Have a good day.